Hello, welcome to the Fifth Star. I'm Jamie.
And I'm Albert.
And this is a podcast where we're trying to find our next 5-star movie. And when we can agree upon a 5-star movie, this podcast will be sent to prison for life.
On this episode, we're reviewing Sing Sing, which is an A24 movie that is it's based on a true story about a special program, arts rehabilitation program that takes place in a maximum security prison in New York. We're going to get into it, but before we do, we've written down the rating out of 5 stars that we gave the movie on the other side of this whiteboard, and then we're going to guess what each other gave it. I'm going to guess, Jamie, that you gave it a 4.0 out of 5.
Okay, I think you also gave it a 4.0.
Okay.
Not to copy or anything.
Right. All right, so we're going to give our initial thoughts, spoiler-free first, and then we'll reveal our scores, and then we'll get into the spoilers.
Yeah.
So, Jamie, what'd you think of Sing Sing?
So I really liked it. It was really good.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if this is a huge spoiler. For me, it was, but I had no idea it was based on a true story.
I didn't either. And they don't tell you.
They don't tell you.
Yeah.
And I also had no idea, we can cut this if we want, but I also had no idea that the characters were actually playing themselves.
Okay.
Other than Coleman Domingo.
Mm-hmm.
That blew my mind. I was like, now I want to watch it again, but like with that context.
So when it was when your first watch, you thought like all of them were actors?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
Except I did think Divine Eye or Clarence, I did think he is too convincing. He's either an amazing actor or he like actually is this person.
Yeah.
So I did think that. When it was confirmed at the end, I was like, that's really cool. That's actually really cool that he got to like be himself in this movie. And like,
I also really liked it.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it took a little longer to really get into it and warm up to
slow.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a slow build.
In the beginning, you're just kind of dropped into this prison, not really given much context. Now, the one thing that surprised me was that it says that it was a maximum security correctional facility. And so I was like, okay, wow. Like I knew this was kind of about a prison story and then how there's like acting or something theater related or I don't know. But yeah, so I wasn't expecting it to be in that kind of setting. But then I start watching and there's all these kind of guys who, to me, it was very clear that most of them were not actors. And so then I was like, is this like almost like felt like a documentary where...
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't feel that way at all.
These people are just like being themselves. These seem like normal dudes. And then it also felt like, oh, this must be like a real thing that happened, like this kind of program.
Oh, so you put the pieces together.
Yeah. And so as I'm watching now, Coleman Domingo is clearly different. Like he's a very trained theatrical and film actor, right? So to me, he kind of stood out as very different from those other guys. And then with Divine Eye, Clarence Macklin, I agree. Like I was like, oh, this guy is 100% like just being himself. Like he is not an actor. So that I think but that juxtaposition between their two characters and the portrayal of their two characters made it very interesting.
Yeah.
And then as the story goes on, which we'll unpack more in spoilers, like that really is the heart of the movie. And that's the part that I really ended up liking the most.
Yes. I really still thought, like, even though he was playing himself, I
Mhm.
still thought his acting was really good. Like that scene where he first draws him to the window
Mhm.
and they kind of have a sort of a fight.
Mhm.
His acting with the facial expressions was so good. Like
Yeah.
he looked so scary to me in that moment. And I was like, dang,
But that
I can like empathize with him, but at the same time he's so scary and like he could just pull out a knife and shiv him or whatever.
Yeah, but that kind of fear coming from a real like gangsta thug, that is something that is earned on the street, right? Like you don't just act like that and have it be convincing.
Yeah.
And I think when you do, you get the best version of that is like Denzel Washington in Training Day, right? He's scary and he's like a gangster, bad guy and all that, but it's clearly like someone acting still.
Yeah.
You're never convinced for a moment, like, and I guess because it's Denzel Washington, but
this guy, you're convinced.
this guy,
through.
like this guy, even if he is an actor, like he's really lived the life.
Yeah.
Like it's part of who he is.
He's drawing from something real.
Yes. And so one of my favorite TV shows I reference a lot is like The Wire. And one of the kind of things about that was when they were casting all like the drug dealers and stuff, they casted actual drug dealers.
Oh, wow.
Like real people from the street. And that's what gave it such a raw authenticity.
Dang.
Like the way they talk and the way they carry themselves and the intimidation that's like that you live with actually on the streets. Yeah, that whole element of it, I think, with Clarence Mackin. But I agree with you. That was the starting point.
Yeah.
But you really got a much more multifaceted type of performance.
You did.
That I was very impressed by. Now, Coleman Domingo also I thought was very good.
He was so good.
Yeah, did you
think?
think?
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So you think?
I want him to win the Oscar now.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. He's beating Timothy in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely.
I was like, wow.
I definitely think he did better than Timothy Chalamet.
Did he do better than Adrian Brody?
So that's the hard thing. I don't know.
Ooh.
I do think that he's giving Adrian Brody like a run for his money.
Nice.
But I do think Adrian Brody's gonna win.
Okay.
It's a more sophisticated performance from Adrian Brody, I guess. But Coleman Domingo was really good.
So compelling.
And yeah, as the story continued to move on, I just got more and more into his performance. But I actually thought almost like Clarence Macklin was almost better.
But also Clarence Macklin's playing himself.
He is, but the arc of where his character goes, I thought really showed like he's not just doing that.
Yeah.
Like there was so much more
There's a
depth
lot of
there.
depth.
And the fact that he's an untrained actor, being able to go there is more impressive to me than what Coleman Domingo did as a trained actor.
Yeah. Well, while I was in the middle of watching the movie, I wondered why he wasn't nominated for an Oscar.
Yeah, right?
Because I was like, he's so good. He should have at least gotten supporting.
Exactly.
But then when I realized it was him playing himself, I was like, oh, maybe that's why. Like, maybe that's the only reason why.
Yeah.
Even though I agree with you, he did a phenomenal job.
Yeah. So all the actors were essentially really the real people, except for Coleman Domingo, the guy who plays Mike, who's actually Coleman Domingo's like one of his best friends, if not his best friend actor. Yeah. Now he's
then the theater director?
And the theater director.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So those three are the only like professional quote unquote, But even like Mike, he's only has a few credits. I think he's more in the theater, like he runs his own theater company and stuff like that. So he's not like a cinema actor. And
he did good though.
Yeah, he was
fit
good.
Right in.
Yeah, he was good. But to me, he didn't feel like on Coleman Domingo's level of like cinema actor. But their chemistry was really good, which is I think what was important, and that was like based on the real thing. Now after watching this, I did kind of do a little more research, and like this is a real program that exists. A lot of the guys who are playing themselves are alumni of this program,
right?
So that's really cool. You have like these clips of like actual archival footage, right, from their real plays and stuff. The whole play that they put on that's all true.
Real.
Yeah, like they really wrote that. So all that was really fun. Like I thought they did a really good job of putting all that together, bringing that to screen. The interview that I heard with the director, Greg Quader, they actually wanted to make a point to film at an actual like correctional facility, right? Instead of just like a set.
Yeah.
And so they used one that was like a decommissioned one. But apparently a lot of the actors were at one point inmates there.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're actually like,
I wonder
men
what
who
that
were
did
free.
to them.
Yeah. Who were like, I'm never coming back, stepping back in. And then like one of the guys, when he's in a cell, they actually recreated what his actual cell was like.
Wow.
And they were filming in a cell like right below his actual cell that he used to stay in. So yeah, just
But
how
what like commitment to
I
like
know.
wanting to retell this
I
story
know.
that you're willing to like go back into
Go
that
back.
spot.
Yes.
Oh my
Yeah, and
gosh.
then another kind of manifestation of that is, or demonstration of that is, you know how they wear like the
Yeah.
green color like uniforms. Um, so when a lot of these men left, the color green is like a trigger. So they
Hmm.
actually don't wear green in their regular everyday clothes. Like they don't wear green socks, green pattern things, or any of that stuff.
Wow.
And then like but for the film they needed to wear that again,
Yeah.
and they were like it was a very hard thing for them to put that clothes back
Oh
on.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think like Divine Eye, it was one of the guys said that like when they put it on, it was almost like their skin was like reacting
Wow.
like to the cloth itself. Like yeah, it's
Wow.
such a trigger,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
kind of physical psychological trigger. um but I think what this film did really really well is that it brought you into the mindset of like the how hard it is psychologically and emotionally
Yeah.
being incarcerated for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So
Cause like even without I expected violence.
okay.
But all of it was so emotional,
Mm-hmm.
like internal turmoil,
Yeah.
that I still really felt the impact of like being locked up. Like they could have shown a lot more stuff with like the wardens and
Yeah.
like, you know, being patted down or whatever. Like they could have showed a lot more of that, but they kind of chose not to focus so much on that
Yeah.
and just focus more on like the theater program. And it worked to me. I thought it worked really well.
Yeah. So I think that's where it it took a little while for me to get into it, because I thought in the initial setup there was too little of the outside the theater life
Yeah.
in the correctional facility.
Yeah.
Because it starts off with like this is a maximum security prison or facility, and so it may and I was expecting there to show like the juxtaposition a lot more of like maybe guys making fun of them about like, oh, you're like the theater boys or whatever, what are you guys doing there, or or
But that would have been so like soap opera
yeah, I
y.
don't know, or even like they tease a little bit of the kind of intimidating each other, and all that kind of stuff, and the stuff with like people patting down your cell, and but it was so sparse, and
Yeah.
I thought I really wanted more of that and expected there
But
to be more
part
of
of me
that.
feels like it's more realistic, actually. I think movies really play that up
Yeah.
to an extreme degree
Yeah.
that now we're like, oh, that's what prison's like. But
Yeah.
then I felt like this is probably a more accurate representation. So,
I think you're right. And I was really challenged. It was really challenging me like viewing it, because I'm like, yeah, is it me just being too stuck in all the tropes that all these other movies have done? And,
yeah.
so yeah, that was kind
I
of
mean,
like,
I've never been to prison, so I don't know.
yeah, neither have I. But this movie did remind me of two of my favorite movies of all time, which is American History X and Shawshank Redemption, which are
Very much like Shawshank
yeah,
Redemption
which are
in
both
ways.
yeah, about prison, but not only prison. The reason why I love those movies is because it shows you what it's like in the inside, but it also shows you what the kind of how much of an adjustment and shock it is to the system to go from that lifestyle every day to going out and being
Yeah.
free,
Yeah.
right? And it's not as easy as you might expect, right?
Yeah.
And this movie also taps into that and really does communicate that and makes you feel that. And so like there's this one scene that, without giving too much away, there's a guy who basically tells them and is very honest about what that experience is like.
Yeah.
And you're watching it and you're like, this guy is just talking for real. Like he's not acting. Like this is probably just like him just telling the truth about what his experience is like now being out. It was so real and so raw
Yeah.
that I was like, oh my gosh, those other two movies are all-time classics
Yeah.
in my top 5 of all time, right?
Dang.
And so this is like the fact that it's in that orbit of those kind of movies is very impressive.
Wait, going back to that guy who
Mhm.
was like sharing his experience. I noticed in the credits his name was different.
Oh,
Is
so
he
was he an
also an
actor?
actor?
I don't know actually,
Because it
because
said
he was such a minor role that.
his name said something, I don't remember,
Mhm.
playing Charlie. And his name wasn't
Oh.
Charlie.
Okay. So what the director said was that he asked each person, do you want us to use your real name? Do you want to go
Oh,
by
so
a
it was a fake
pseudonym?
name.
Do you
Okay.
want, yeah. So everyone kind of decided for themselves. So maybe he chose.
So maybe he's a real guy that just chose a pseudonym.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I'm
Gotcha.
guessing.
Gotcha.
Yeah, let's see what we gave it. Okay, you guessed that I would give it a 4.0, and I did give it a 4.0. Yeah, you nailed it.
You guessed I would give it
Oh,
4.0.
did you get a 4.5? Oh my gosh! What?
It's
A 5.0!
I literally finished the movie
Oh, wow.
sobbing through the credits. Sobbing. And I went, I don't think I can improve this. I don't think I can make this better. And I did. Also, immediately, I wanted to start it over and watch it again.
Wow.
And it was one of those, like, wow, I
Oh,
haven't experienced this in a long time.
yeah. When was your last 5.0 movie?
I'm pretty sure the last time I gave a movie 5 stars was I, Tanya,
Oh,
which
yeah,
I watched
that's
in
right.
2017.
Has it been that long?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So it's been like 7 years
Wow.
since I've given a movie a 5 star.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
crazy.
So
I really went back and forth too. I was like, is it a 4.5?
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, I'm just going to do it. It's a 5.
I mean, okay, so rewatchability, because that's important for
It's
you
very
as a
important to
5.
me.
And the fact that you wanted to instantly restart it,
Yep.
that's good.
I felt so in love with the characters. I loved that it was based on a true story. I'm a sucker for those,
Yeah, me too.
usually. I loved the creativity behind it. Like the fact that they're prisoners, but they're also actors, and they seek freedom by putting on someone else's skin, you know?
Mhm.
And I loved that concept. And then I also love the concept of like feeling trapped in a box, both personally, but also like literally.
Yeah.
And how you don't, like, you get to define your own box.
Mhm.
You don't have to let everyone else define your box for you.
Yeah.
That scene between Divine I and Divine G,
Yeah.
where they're like, looking for costumes, was just so good. Where he's
Mhm.
like, I'm a gangster, and like, that's what I'm supposed to be.
Mm.
And then Koma Domingo's like, no, you're an artist.
Mm.
Like, there are other parts of you
Yeah, like
that you can tap into.
the
and
way
that's
you
like,
see yourself, it can really hinder or
yeah.
open up, kind of like giving yourself permission to
Mhm.
be all the different parts of you versus yeah.
So good. Oh,
Wow. So I really did think you might be at a 4.5, but I didn't think you would actually go to a 5.
I
Wow.
couldn't help it.
Okay.
It was probably a 4.5 until I realized it was a true story, and then I was like,
and then
okay,
you're done.
there's nothing wrong with it.
That's
Nothing wrong
perfect.
with it.
Okay, so we need to get into the Oscar conversation here,
Okay.
I think. Because this movie got nominated for, best director, best actor.
Yep.
Coleman Domingo. Cool.
Amazing.
We agree with that,
Yeah.
right? Whether he wins or not, like, well-deserved
He did so good.
nomination. Yeah. Best song, which I don't really remember
I don't
the
really
song.
remember the song.
Yeah.
That's
So
kind of
that's
random.
fine. And then best adapted screenplay, which this is based off of a book
yes.
that's been, because so this story's been told in like a documentary, a book that's been written.
I need to read the book now.
Yeah, the
I didn't know there was a
play-
book.
Yeah, there's a book, I think. And then the play is also like
Wow.
in print, or they've
Wow.
published it, I think.
Okay.
So this, it's based on multiple layers of this true story. But it did do a good job of adapting, and like as I did research, I was like, oh yeah, all the
I
really
loved the
important stuff
script.
is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it's pretty tight, like it's under 2 hours. And so a lot is packed in
Yeah.
there. It covers a lot of ground.
And
but-
I loved that like they only gave the characters lines that were necessary.
Mm,
Like there were so many moments where I would try to like predict what the next line would be,
mhm,
and then there would be just silence in response.
yeah.
And I kept thinking, yes, that's the right choice.
Mm,
Like don't say an obvious, oh, it's okay, buddy. Like, don't do that. Just be silent.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and so,
there's so many choices.
yeah,
like
so the
that.
whole thing about a movie is written with 3 times, once for the script, once on set, and then once in the edit.
Yeah.
And so when listening to the director talk about it, he talked about how there was a scene where they were supposed to all be sitting around talking, and then Coleman Domingo kind of stops and then goes, "What are we trying to accomplish here?" And the director's like, "Oh, basically, we're just trying to show the camaraderie and you guys kind of getting along." And so before that, they had been rehearsing that scene. He was just with those other guys, and they were just kind of like all standing around breakdancing and stuff, and talking about like the songs that they listened to in the 80s and 90s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then Coleman Domingo suggested, "Why don't we just do what we were just doing?" Like, and film that instead of like sitting around talking about how we're all getting along.
Oh, and that's when they did like
and
the
then
montage.
that's when they did the whole like dancing thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's like an example of like
only do what's necessary.
Yeah, the lyrics. I mean, the words aren't, dialogue isn't necessary here. So let's just show it visually, right? Show, don't tell. So a lot of good principles of filmmaking. Yeah, I think it is a well-deserved adapted screenplay nomination, but it didn't get nominated for Best Picture. So out of 10 movies,
it's so disappointing.
It wasn't on the list of the top 10. And I've at this point seen all 10. And I will say this is
your number one.
I would say if this was nominated, this would be my number one. And
Dang.
It seems like it was really well liked by the critics. The problem, I think, was the release and the campaign was kind of messed up because it came out really early.
It came out in 2023 for Sundance or something.
Yeah.
Right?
And then it kind of got lost. And then now, like, even now, like, people can't really see. It's not really in the theaters. You can only like rent it for $20. You know, it's not on streaming.
It should be.
So
don't you wish you bought it?
For $5 more. Now I'm like, oh man. But I don't know. So what do you think about like the fact that it didn't get nominated for Best Picture?
I was sad. I actually went through the list again of all the Best Picture nominations, and I was like, seriously?
Yeah.
Like, this totally deserves to be on that list.
Yeah, at least it's, even if out of 4.0, like, you know, or if someone doesn't get a 5, it's still better than at least half of the movies on the list.
I agree. There are like a lot of movies on there that I'm like, why is this on there?
Yeah.
So that's the other problem.
That is, I think this is like one of the big snubs of the year.
I know, and it's got like the social justice stuff that the Oscar people love, the Academy people. So
what's also
it must have been a marketing thing.
Well, maybe also the thematic nature of it. I don't know, but there was a documentary this year called Daughters. So this reminded me a lot of that. It's a Netflix doc. That movie Daughters was supposedly in the front running as on the short list for getting nominated for a best documentary. It didn't make the cut. And that's also about a special, unique program for incarcerated men. And about how they get this one opportunity to have a father-daughter dance in in prison. Cry. But it's a documentary. And
it made me cry.
Like, this movie reminded me a lot of that movie. And I think I saw that before this. Maybe that might be why I'm a little lower on this movie. I feel like it could have been amazing as just a doc too, which that doc does exist somewhere. So maybe I'll watch it and realize, no, the narrative. But I think the narrative works. But then you have also using all the real actors, and they're not really trained. The whole thing is shot on film, but like, I think they shot on Super 16, not 35 millimeter. So I think maybe the reason why I didn't get nominated for Best Picture, my best guess is that it didn't feel like quite polished enough. You know, like it was kind of a gritty, almost like it was very indie kind of feel.
Yeah, I could see that.
You know, with untrained actors.
A24, I mean, that's A24 for you.
Yeah, but A24 doesn't have a good track record, right, of getting Best Picture nominations.
Yeah, it does.
Does it?
Everything Everywhere was an A24 movie.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Like, there were parts of it that felt a little uneven and not totally polished, but I totally get the 5.0. Like,
thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Not being judged for my perfect movie.
No, it was, oh man. I mean, it was very good. I was by the end of the movie, I was almost at a 4.5.
Oh.
Like it just kept getting stronger as the movie kept going.
I just kept crying too. Every time something happened, I was like crying. When he was getting interviewed by the parole people, I was crying because oh, it was just painful, you know? And then when he gets his brick, oh,
Yeah,
I was devastated.
Yeah.
And then the whole scene right after with the Divine Eye has the feather one,
Yeah.
and you're just like, oh my word, this guy keeps getting what our main character wants, but our main character keeps like being kind and gracious for the most part. There's a couple slip ups, but like he's still choosing to be generous to this guy who keeps getting what like he probably thinks he deserves, you know? And I thought that was so cool to see in a main character. Like he felt flawed, but he still felt like someone I can really look up to and respect.
What I did expect was the setup in terms of, okay, here's the guy who's like the guy who's got it all together. And then you have he takes this other guy on, you know, really rough around the edges, helps him and all that. So I'm like, okay, I kind of see where this is going.
Right.
But when that flip happens, that's when I really fell in love with the movie, where being able to see this guy who had everything put together just finally crumble, like meeting his breaking point, like they mentioned, and him genuinely like losing it on everybody, I thought was so good.
It was really good.
And then how this guy actually, like through the kindness of Divine G, like ends up becoming a better person. And even though he's getting slighted,
oh my gosh,
whenever he tries to whenever he tries to help him, the fact that he's still loyal, it was so powerful, and it made it so much more impactful when in the end they finally get to this like, okay, we're good.
Yeah And I love that that's finally his moment too, to kind of share about himself. Because up until that point, he's been really like guarded and vague about his vulnerability. But in that moment, he finally shares, I used to draw and paint when I was a kid. I used to be an artist. And then Divine G told him, you are an artist. And it was like, that's like what helped flip the switch. And so
it's hard enough in a movie to have your protagonist have a good arc. And that's a big reason why I think a lot of movies fail, is because it just stays flat, or it goes up but doesn't come back down, or whatever it is, or it goes down but doesn't come back up. So the fact that we got to see Divine G arc, that was great. What I didn't expect was how Divine I was going to have the reverse arc. Like mirror, them kind of mirror each other and opposite. And yet through it all, like their relationship and friendship continues to deepen. Like that was the beauty of this movie, I think.
It really was.
And that's where like the drama works, because it's not really about the other stuff happening. It's really about what's going on in these two men, right? And how they're growing, or losing grip and then growing again. And so the moment in the end when Divine G is just, he's already blown up at everybody, he's kind of like off on the side, I really identified with Divine G, because generally I feel like I have myself put together, I'm in control of myself, my emotions, my reality, my situation, whatever. But when things start to go awry, it's really hard for me, I think, to be in that place of weakness and ask for help.
I am the same way.
And that was Divine G's thing, right? He's like, no, like I'm the guy who helps people.
I don't get helped.
Exactly. Like, and it's not that, I don't even think it's like a pride thing. I think it's I don't know what this feels like, and so I don't know what to do in this situation.
It's a vulnerable thing, asking for help. It's incredibly vulnerable, because you're admitting that you need help, and then you're also opening yourself up to somebody denying you help. Like, it's a vulnerable place. So I definitely relate to that too.
So that part kind of was like, oh man, I feel that. I feel that. I feel what he must be going through, why it's so hard. Like, he can't just get over it, right? Like losing, and it all happens together. Like losing his best friend, losing, hope. Now, like, how many times can someone have, I mean, this is Shawshank, right? Like, how many times can someone hold on to hope, and upon rejection, rejection after rejection, before you just come to a point of like, that I just give up, right? And that's how it kind of gets you. But the beauty of this whole program is that this is the same thing I felt about the daughters. This is a very complicated issue. Like, these men are there because they did something bad, right? And they hurt people in some way, especially if you're going to end up at a maximum security, facility. There is a sense of justice being served by, removing them outside of society. But if you just leave them there to just go crazy and devolve and, and then not even treat them like human beings anymore, like, then is that really like what you should be doing? Like, I don't think so, right? So having these kinds of programs that are like towards rehabilitation, like, that's where the power of this program is, where it's like, no, like, we are, and they reference it too. They're like, we are still human. Like, we're not just like dogs who are like caged.
And
right?
he keeps saying that. He keeps saying, don't let them treat you like this because they think that's what you are.
Yeah.
Show them that you're still a human being. Show them that you're the king or whatever of this place. Mm. Don't come in with your head down because that's what they expect of you. And I was like, man, that was good.
It's just such a powerful movie. And I do feel like not only this movie gets snubbed for Best Picture, but I do think Clarence Macklin got snubbed for Best Actor or Supporting Actor.
Yeah.
Like, I was kind of on the fence about him. Yeah. Like, oh, there's like an untrained actor who's just like acting like, gangster because he is, But then the moment where he's walking around, and the way it was shot of him walking around the outside of the circle as he's reciting Hamlet, and it's been built up like they're trying to help him and bring out the actor inside of him and all this kind of stuff. And then when he delivers that monologue, I was like, yo, this guy is good.
You were like, Shakespeare. Yeah, I get it now. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, he was so good in that scene. And then the rest of the movie, you start getting like the emotional and the softer sides of him coming out. And then it actually, by the end, made me really question. I'm like, wait, is he really just an actor who was playing that in the early part? But I think it's just because he's actually, and these men,
he's talented.
Yeah, these men, even though they're kind of amateur because they, like, haven't been professionally doing it.
Sure.
But they've been in lots of plays at this point, right? Like in this program.
They've had experience.
Yeah, and so it was very impressive.
Yeah,
so,
that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Jamie recommends this movie. I also
listen. Whenever this comes out on any kind of like streaming services, go watch it because it's so good. I want it to be available on streaming services like soon. I was waiting to watch this movie all of last year.
Yeah,
and it never really released. I think it was in the theater for maybe 1 week.
Yeah,
and yeah, so for real, go watch it.
And if you have watched it, let us know what you think about the movie.
You can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Letterboxd, Apple Podcasts. Comment and let us know how you maybe experienced the movie.
Yeah. And next week, we're going to do something really fun, which is going to be our last episode before the Oscar show. So we're going to do a whole prediction episode.
Yep.
So join us next week as we continue our quest for the 5th star.